All right, let's get started editing. First of all, open up your Lightroom. What is great is if you can pick up one of the photos that you shot that you really like and start editing with me. Drop it on your laptop, import it, and let's get started. First of all, I picked about 3 or 4 photos for you. Some are street photography, some are cityscape, and some are landscape. So just to give you an overall mix, because I know I've been shooting a lot. I've been showing you a lot of examples with subject and then cities, but what about landscape? Well, we'll dig into it right now in terms of editing 101. All right, the first part when I get a photo that I want to edit is simply remembering the location where I shot it and what I had in mind. Obviously, that one was a cityscape. I remember it was around sunset time. There was some very nice colors starting to pop up in the sky. And I wanted to get that train going towards me and get a little vibe of Chicago, of the city. Obviously, it's an industrial area, so there is a little bit of grit to it. And that's something that you want to remember because I want to add a little bit of it in my photo. Now, the first thing I'm going to do on that image is simply, and what I do on every image is simply using my white balance tool to make sure that my white balance is correct. Now, guys, in this video, in the 101, I'm gonna give you an overview of the first tools right here. And we're going to do a bunch of adjustments that really make your photos pop without too much. And then next week, we'll dig a little bit deeper into each panel. I also have a specific video for you detailing each and every panel of Lightroom, how it works, how it affects your images, etc. I think you will love it. And as mentioned in the course promo, there will be an extension to Learn also if you want to really dig into Photoshop after. So on this photo, let's get started. Color temperature, we see that as shot is 6000 Kelvin, tint of -2. I'm looking at my sky right now. It is pretty accurate, I would say. If I bring it cooler, as you can see it, I don't like it too much. If I warm it up a little bit, I prefer it because it's around sunset time, so it's a little bit warmer for me. So I'm gonna just increase it a little bit. There we go. Yeah, that should be good. The tint, I'm not gonna change it because I like the way it was done by my camera. And now I get to the next panel. That panel with the tones is where a lot of things will happen. I personally work mostly here and here on the tone curve. So on that image, what I can see already is that it might be a little bit dark on the forefront here, on that part. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to increase a little bit my exposure. There we go. Just to bring out a little bit of those shadows that were lost here. Now, as you can see also, the image is a little bit crooked, but I highly suggest doing cropping after, meaning you can crop here and then you can straighten the horizon and that's gonna be better. But what happens is that on Lightroom, if you do local adjustments and you crop before, your local adjustments are not gonna be applied to the rest of the image that was cropped out. So you wanna make sure that's one of the last thing you do. Okay, I've got my exposure right, I've got my white balance right. What can we do here? Well, we're gonna go down to tone curve and I'll keep those for after. So tone curve is great. Highly recommend to watch the other video about it very soon. Tone curve is great, but think about it as a way to really get the contrast you want and bring out the shadows you want, or actually kill the shadows, bring out the highlights or kill them as you want. Right here, I'm going to put a point in the center, which is the center of those curves. You'll see the video detailing all the tool will explain to you how it works. But right now, if you just follow what I do, you'll see a huge change. You'll start to get the hang of it by yourself, and that's what I highly suggest. It's not just watching tutorial, it's also trying it for yourself. So here I'm gonna drop the point here, and what you can see is clearly I'm getting a lot darker darks. You know, the shadows are being crushed, the blacks are being crushed. So I want to be a little bit subtle. There we go. And I'm going to bring a little bit my point in the highlights. I'm going to leave it, actually bring it a little bit under. Let me see. Nope, I'm not going to change it because as you can see, is that here we've got a lot of information in the highlights. And I want to keep it that way because I want to bring out that sky. I want to make it a little bit more epic, or at least as epic as I saw it. Right here, the photo has been flattened out a little bit. So I'm gonna move a little bit that point, bring that part down. There we go. Now I've got a little bit more contrast, as you can see. I'm gonna turn off that tone curve just to show you. It's subtle, but it already has a little bit of crispiness. And now there is something to know that is very important. When you edit, you will go back and forth between different panels. But if you start with that order, I think you get less back and forth, and it's also easier to adjust because some of those panels are a little bit more destructive than others. Tone curves are great to start, in my opinion, to get the contrast you want. So that's kind of what I would want to see in terms of contrast. I might want to increase a little bit the highlights, especially on the tracks, but I don't want to lose it in the sky. So we'll try something here. I'm going to bring down the highlights. What happens? Clearly you can see, look, I'm bringing out the whole sky in the background, which is great. But at the same time, I'm making that part a little bit less punchy. So I'm gonna bring it down quite a lot actually, because that's a sunset shot. And then my shadows, I can bring it up if I want to really bring out all the shadows, or I can drop it. But here I'm gonna bring it a tiny bit, not too much, just in order to get a little bit out of information from that part of the image and that part. Then my white points here, I can, as you can see, it's affecting all the white parts. So what is going to happen is I'm going to, I don't want to drop it too much because then it looks a little bit, I like a little bit of punchiness in the photos, which means a little bit of contrast. So I'm actually going to leave it around here, around 6. And now my black points, and you see a big suggestion is to go all the way left and all the way right just to see how it's affecting your image, and then coming back towards smaller adjustments. And my blacks, I might increase them a little bit just to bring out a little bit more blacks. Now, what is going to be great here is that, as you can see, we don't have as much. Let's do a little before after. First of all, it's warmer. We brought out more shadows. We have a little bit more contrast, I would say, yet we brought out more information in the image. Now, what I'm going to do is increase the clarity. Boom. You see, clarity is a tool that you have to be very careful of. It's very tempting to put it all the way up, or all the way, no, never did it on all the way down. Sporadically bring it up like plus 15, because that's a cityscape shot. There are no humans in it, so you won't see any weird artifact on people's face. Now, in terms of vibrance, saturation here, my rule of thumb is to test it out a little bit, see what happens. Vibrance is bringing out a lot of colors, as you can see, but I might not want all those colors. So what I'm gonna do is bring it up a little bit, and that's my rule of thumb. I like to increase the vibrance and drop the saturation a tiny bit. So there we go. I don't want too many colors, except maybe in the sky, but that's more for local adjustments I can do later. We'll talk about it in the next episodes. So before, after, you can see that's already a pretty cool result in my opinion. Now I might want to add a little bit more of that contrast here and bring up a little bit more of the highlights, but not the mid highlights, if that makes sense. There we go. Just, and I'm looking at those train tracks because I like the shininess of those train tracks and I want to bring it up. So that's it. That's my first shot. That's where I would be right now. So before, after, easy, simple, nothing too special. Now I can recrop it. I can make it look a little bit better. I can change my composition if I want afterwards, you know, align a little bit things if I want more sky and less tracks, or on the contrary, if I want more of the tracks just to add more perspective into that shot, totally possible.